True. Okay.
Hi, welcome back to the Film Review Podcast. This week we watched and reviewed the movie called Beautiful Boy, starring Timothy Chalamet and Steve Carell. And the movie is based on a true story by the author David Sheff, and it's a depiction and a memoir based on the story of his son's addiction. So, what did you think of the podcast? Of the podcast of the film?
I think the podcast was good, yeah. No, I think Steve Carell was like of all the like everyone was great, but Steve Carell like blew me out of the water. Like
Yeah,
again, like going through the theme of like last podcast with Seth Rogen, like just a comedic actor, just being such a serious actor in a movie and just blowing it out of the water. It's just so like bizarre.
yeah. Yeah, like completely out of their comfort zone of what
Yeah.
you were so used to seeing them in. Yeah, he was absolutely amazing.
Yeah, he was brilliant now, in fairness. And it just goes to show how like kind of comedy actors are always kind of dismissed, and it's like, oh yeah, but it's not real acting, even though like their comedy acting is good. When you see them
Yeah.
then playing like a role as serious as this, it's like, Jesus. It's fantastic,
Definitely.
like, yeah.
It's the same
I
as
also
like
go on, sorry.
it's the same as like Jonah Hill, like in Moneyball or like Wolf of Wall Street, you know. He's
Yeah, we
normally a
actually watched
comedic
him in
actor
War
and
Dogs a
just-
couple of days ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
crazy.
I also think like Timothy Chalamet was amazing in it. I think people like dismiss him because he's known as like a heartthrob, like like I don't know, he's very
Yeah,
like he
he's
has
your
a
pretty
big
boy,
like
like,
female
yeah.
following. He's in like a few like rom-coms and stuff, and people kind of dismiss him, but his acting, oh my god, unbelievable. Between that and Little Women, like I think he's underrated in terms of his acting. Like,
Yeah, this
He
was
in
crazy,
Little
like.
Women.
yeah, he was.
I completely forgot about that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a good movie.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he was brilliant in this, especially like the further, do you know, that his addiction kind of went down, and kind of like the stranger he had to
Yeah.
act and everything, and it was like, yeah, or even when he was resuscitating the other addict that he was with for a little while
yeah.
Yeah.
and putting her into the ambulance and stuff, he was just, yeah, I know, he was fantastic.
Yeah.
Fun fact too, the real Nick Sheff, he actually requested for Timothy Chalamet to play him.
Did he?
Yeah.
That's mad.
Mad.
Is it
I mean,
based
to be
on?
fair, yeah,
Is it
I'd love
is it
to
based on
request
a
someone
book
to-
or?
It is, yeah,
Yeah.
it's based on a book, yeah.
It's based on,
a real life book, like, yeah.
Oh,
It's based on the book Beautiful Boy by David Sheff, and he's actually an author anyway, but he wrote a book and it's basically the memoir of his son's addiction. But I was watching a thing and an interview of him talking, and like I need to read that book too. But he was saying in the interview, like, do you know, usually like with movies and stuff they can like dramatize things and stuff, but he actually said that they left out so much stuff that happened. And I was watching, like, there's parts of it where you're like, oh my god, that's just absolutely chaotic and insane. Like, so I can only imagine like kind of things that they left out.
Yeah, actually, that is quite strange. It's like you're saying, usually they just dramatize things and put things in, being like, oh yeah, that didn't actually happen. It was just for dramatic effect. But like,
Yeah.
that's mad, actually. Yeah, that they didn't even bother. They didn't even need to do that for this film, like, because it was
No.
already so like, it was already absolutely ripping our hearts out. Like, yeah,
Yeah, literally.
The
Yeah.
story was so good too. Like
Yeah.
there were parts where I fully thought that it flashed back, but in reality it was just he like relapsed or something happened, you know, and I was like, no way he's done that, like, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
mad.
yeah. I thought the way they kind of like told the story with flashbacks, like at first it was kind of like, why are we getting so much flashbacks? But it was just to kind of like sum up, give us more of an idea of kind of like the relationship between the father and son and like how it developed, and kind of showing that like when people think of like people who are like addicted to meth or heroin, they think like must have had a horrible childhood, like parents were never around, like must
Yeah.
have been the parents' fault. But it just goes to show like it's honestly just pure luck sometimes.
Yeah.
like,
It could happen to
just
anyone, 100%.
How you get it, whether you have an addictive gene or personality or not, like, show that kind of way, like it
Yeah.
can just happen, and it's no one's fault ever. It's just kind of the way it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Do you know the way some people say like, oh, addiction is a choice and stuff? I would say watch this movie. Like, honestly, I think it gives a good insight of
Yeah.
like how the extent of like how addiction affects the addict and the burden that it leaves on their family and their loved ones, and like it's actually mad.
Yeah, even when you see like the little kids, like the little brother and sister, and you think
Mhm.
like, oh, should they haven't clue what's going on? They just think their brother's away, and then later
Yeah,
on, and when the little girl is like, is he doing drugs again? And it's
yeah.
just like, oh my
Oh,
god,
or even
like,
that scene with him and his brother at the beach, and like how happy his brother was to be around him, that he was actually around. Like, it's actually
Yeah.
very sad.
Yeah.
yeah,
I love that they made like the relation where like the brother, like he told his younger stepbrother, was it, that
Half brother, yeah.
he'd be there at his like swim meet, and then he
yeah,
couldn't be there at the
Mm.
swim meet because he was off doing heroin. Like,
Yeah,
just crazy to think about. Like, and then
yeah,
the father the whole time had to worry about it without being able to chase after him. Was
yeah,
like he couldn't enjoy life. Like, you know,
yeah,
so messed up.
it's interesting because I'm sure when he said to his brother like that he was going to be there, that in his head at the time he genuinely thought he was going to be there, but that's just like, I'm sure that's like addiction. You just don't know when it's going to like creep up on you and take over your life, I suppose. I think it just done a really good job in like depicting that.
yeah. It was very kind of realistic, like showing how like people recover. Like it's not just a case of, oh sure, you go to rehab and you come out and that's it. Like you're never
Yeah,
gonna,
exactly.
you're
Yeah.
fixed, like you're cured. Like, but that it's something you live with every day for the rest of your life. Like no matter how
Yeah.
long you're sober, it is something that you
Yeah.
think about. Like, and just because you relapse doesn't mean like, oh, that's it. Do you know, like it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that like, oh sure, you're just written off, like, or anything like that. Like it's you can still have a life, like, but it's just going to be harder than people think. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know that car scene where he's like with his girlfriend and the ambulance
Yeah.
come and everything, and she's like, I thought that was so sad because she was like, oh, promise me you would come and everything, and he was like getting angry at her, and it was just like, it just shows that like they weren't really in love. They were in love with the fact that they fed each other's addiction, like, you know.
Yeah.
that's exactly it. And you saw it when she was like, I love you, and he didn't even look at her, and he was like, yeah, I love you too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, like it was, yeah, it was really sad now. Yeah.
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 And even when he called his father then asking to come home, and it seemed so like cold and cruel, where his father was like, no, you can't come home, like, you know, you had your chance or whatever. And it seems awful, but at the same time you're like, you have to understand where they're coming from as well.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
you know, when you're like, well,
Yeah.
if I can't fix this person, like, why, you know, what else can I do? Like, I can't
Yeah.
keep going to the same cycle over and over again. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing that the movie done a really good job at too, was like, you've seen at the start how kind of desperate his father was to just like almost save him. Like, whereas then as you go through the movie, it was like his father kind of grieved the fact that his son was an addict, and kind of came to terms with the fact that like he is who he is and he can't fix him. You kind of seen that in that phone call where he was like, you know, I can't leave you, come home, like ring your sponsor. You know, he
That's
kind
exactly
of
it,
confirmed
yeah.
with that fact.
Yeah, that was a really hard scene. And he just wouldn't ring the sponsor either. I kind of found I was like, he didn't want to give in that he had to fix it the same way, you know. It's just really hard to look.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show, like, whenever, you know, like, he couldn't be like, oh, I'm going to rehab. You can't be like, I'm going to rehab for my dad, or I'm going to rehab for my girlfriend. It has to be for yourself. Like, it can't be for anyone else, or
100%.
else it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Like, because you're just, once
Yeah.
you're away from that person that you're doing it for, well, then you're just going to do it all over again.
Yeah, it's like if you're going to get help or something and you have someone pushing you or whatever, are you doing it for yourself because you want to do it, or are you doing it for them? Do you know what I mean? And that was kind of what it was like for a long time with him, was that he was doing it because, you know, his dad, he felt like probably that he had expectations that he had to live up to. Yeah, it's actually mad.
I thought the part that like where he just left the family again, like to drive wherever he was going. Like he didn't
Oh, yeah.
relapse at this point, and he rang his sponsor like in tears, saying he wanted to like basically kill himself. I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
it just came out of nowhere because like obviously it was bottled up inside of him, but I was just like, I was like, whoa, what? Like it was such
Yeah.
a turn. That was mental.
I thought the maddest thing about it was when Steve Carell he went out and he bought like Coke and he took it just to understand
Oh,
his father's
yeah.
Yeah, literally.
to
Yeah.
understand the addiction. Like,
Jesus, yeah, that was like, oh my God.
was
I was like,
wild.
what the fuck? But when you think about it, then you're like, I understand where he's coming from as well. Even though it seems so extreme when it's your son,
Yeah.
you would
Yeah.
go to those kind of extremes. Like that's how much he loves his son. Like, even though he hates what he's doing, and he in no way
He
agrees with
wanted
it.
to
Obviously,
understand.
he's still going to do whatever he can to understand what he's going through, just so he can help him. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That part, and the part where he talked to like that one woman who was
Yeah.
like also addicted, I think, to heroin or
Yeah.
something.
yeah,
And he
Oh,
like
yeah.
he had coffee with her and he was talking to her. That was like so interesting. It was like
It was so, yeah.
yeah, it was like whoa. I don't
It
know.
was
Her
so, it was
description
sad
of it and
because
everything.
mm,
Like what she said was, at one stage she was like, imagine Coke, but 100 times.
yeah.
And you're just
yeah.
like, the father's just like, probably never took Coke. Then he goes gets it, and it's like, just pure mad. Like,
Yeah. Or I like the
Yeah.
way even when they had kind of a flashback to like before he'd taken meth, but he was taking other drugs, and him and his dad were having a conversation, and he was kind of messing with his dad, being like, "Oh, but sure, you've taken stuff or whatever," and his dad was like, "Yeah, like I experimented," and they were having a conversation, but it kind of just shows like the two sides of taking drugs. Like, you can either take them and just try them and not get addicted, but for some people they take it one time and that's it, you're addicted, and that's just
Yeah.
something in you, like. And kind of showing those two sides of it, like, and how it can affect different people just based on, I suppose, your genetics or whatever it is that makes people addicted. Like,
mad.
then I can go like either way.
It was pure even mad seeing like the cyber. He's inside the car and it's a memory of him bringing up like a joint to his father. Like, I was just like, if
That
I did
was
that,
mad.
my own parents, they'd probably slap me. Like, his father's there, like.
But that's kind of an American thing as well, though. It's kind of
it
in
is
some,
definitely.
it's just a bit more relaxed with like weed and stuff, and then that kind of gets more relaxed conversation to other drugs, like. But then showing there's a massive difference between like a joint and then like meth.
Heroin.
100%. Like,
I thought that sequence where he was looking for his son, like driving in the rain, and it kept cutting back and forth between him with his son, like smoking weed in the car, to him trying to find his son who was out relapsing on heroin again or meth or whatever. I thought that was just so cool that they did it like that. So interesting.
Like, that's a massive insight into like the way the mind of like a parent of an addict works. Like, it's like it must have been something I done, and you go back to mom thinking that's it, that's what I did, and it's my fault, kind of a thing. Like, and seeing the kind of guilt like that he'd face over it.
Especially exactly, especially as you said, like when you've had like not a perfect childhood, but like you've had a fairly good childhood, like you've had a good upbringing, your parents have been good to you and stuff, that it could happen to anyone. And then obviously he went to in his mind he was probably like, what did I do wrong? Even though he didn't do wrong, could have happened to anyone,
exactly. I thought it was edited really well to show like the flashback scenes and kind of like going back and forth. It was edited really well to like show us the relationship and kind of give us more of an idea of like their attachment and everything through like the flashbacks and stuff, and then come to like present day.
Do you know that scene as well where after his parents separate, when he's going back and forth to his parents, and there's a scene when he's with his dad, and his dad tucks him into bed and he's singing him a song, and it's Beautiful Boy. That's how the name of the movie came about. When he would sing him Beautiful Boy, and that's how he named the book then. I thought that was really sweet.
Also, you reminded me of do you know they were saying everything when they hugged, and then when by the third time they had said it, they showed a memory of him at the airport, and they like, you mean everything to me, and you're just like, it's their thing, it's original. And I was like, it's very clever. Like,
it's like how they say like I love you, like
I love you,
which is kind of not rare, like, but it's kind of not really seen with like father and son relationships an awful lot, like kind of like that kind of closeness and that kind of saying I love you, like.
I think it gives it gives a good like good way of showing like that people say I love you in different ways.
Exactly.
I thought the way they conveyed like and demonstrated the relationship between father and son, like the way they built that up with those like little mannerisms where they like hugged and said something like everything, whatever they said, like that, all that like little mannerisms they did together, like to build the relationship, was just insanely like well done. Like
definitely.
There was a real bond there, and then you could see it was broken or whatever through.
Yeah, and we didn't
Yeah.
need like a big long backstory to see their bond.
Yeah.
Like it was just in those
Yeah.
little things and like how they acted around each other. And I suppose that comes down to like acting and like the direction of it as well.
Yeah.
Just to be like,
Definitely.
it's just these things we need to see. Like we don't need to like get the big long backstory of like from when you were born to this and that's why you're so close. We just see it like right in front of us there and then.
Yeah.
And that was
I
done
think it
really well.
is. It is like a very tragic story, but it does have a happy ending because the real Nick has been clean for like since 2011, and he's an artist now and he's married. So
Nice.
he did have a happy ending in the end.
Yeah, like I thought near the end, I was like, either he's gonna kill himself or when he
Yeah.
overdosed in the bathroom, then I was like, oh my god, that's it. And even like the way like the music changed near the end when he was having the overdose to like an operatic score, that kind of made it like, well,
Yeah.
this is definitely like a tragic end anyway. Like the music and everything kind of made it like, oh my god, and it was like, oh no, he's dead, like, you know. And then when
Yeah.
he came back and he was like, no, he's
Yeah.
lucky to survive, like, yeah.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Even the
It's
music.
crazy.
Oh, go on, Adam.
Sorry, it's crazy how like the doctors and everyone was talking about how like his brain cells are like permanently damaged. Some parts of his brain is over drug. I was like, what? That can happen? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
was
like
that
your
is
nerve
wild.
endings and
Yeah.
everything. Yeah, I was like, oh my god.
So
And that's
crazy,
like, it was kind of
you'll
like,
never get that back.
yeah, and it was
Yeah.
horrible the way by the time he went to that doctor or specialist, whoever it was, that told him that.
Yeah.
And he was like, my son has been in rehab, like, and I didn't know this. It was kind of
Yeah.
like, how come
Yeah.
you know, the rehab center told him, and when he first went into rehab, they told him like, oh, the success rate on the high end is like 80%, and on the low end it's like 25% or something.
Mhm.
So the rehab center kind of gave him hope of thinking like he'll just come in here once and
He's
be
just-
clean, and that's it.
yeah,
And kind of set him up
100%.
for kind of a fall. Like, and when you went to your man and your man was like, the success rate is in single digits, like. That
It was
was like
8%,
such
yeah.
a shock, like to his system almost. It was just kind of like, oh my god.
It's because of that thing again, like that. Of course, not everyone, but a lot of people do go to rehab because their families are like absolutely desperate and they feel like they need to do it for their families. Whereas like you don't need rehab if you really want to do it for yourself. I feel like you're gonna do it. Do you know what I mean? You don't. I don't know. I that's my opinion anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, it's
And
very
it-
much drove that narrative. Like,
Definitely.
Yeah. And it was kind of interesting to see as well. Like usually like when we see, for myself anyway, I never saw a film like it, because usually when we see like people who are addicted to like meth or heroin or methadone or anything in movies, it's like just random kind of people who were like I don't know, who were like just kind of written off characters who were like homeless or they're dead or they're going to
Yeah,
die
they
of it or
have like
anything
a
like that.
chaotic background.
Yeah, and even like in real life, when people hear like, oh, he's addicted to meth or he's addicted to heroin, it's almost as if they're just kind of written off as if like, well, there's nothing to do, like he's going to die kind of a thing.
Yeah.
You know, and that was even like in the back of my mind watching the film. I was like, well, he's obviously going to die. Like, you know, there's no kind of hope for him, like just from what I had seen. But then to hear like, well, this is about a real person and they did survive it. Like, you know, I feel like with
Yeah.
meth, you don't really hear that a lot of someone who's
Yeah.
like addicted to it, like and relapsed multiple times.
Yeah.
So it was good to kind of like see that side of it as well.
Yeah. Oh, one
There
other
was-
thing actually I found was the music in the film. You didn't really have a certain style of music. It was kind of like
Yeah.
every kind of genre. There was like one stage there was heavy metal, and then there was kind of relaxing kind of beat to it.
Sorry.
We're having a technical difficulty right here. And what else? It was kind of like, it was kind of good. There was one like song I kind of knew in it. It was kind of country western one now.
Oh, it was Neil Young, I think.
Neil
Harry
Young,
Gold
yeah.
played when he was I think it was when he was cycling or something with his sponsor, and it was kind of
Yeah.
like when things were getting good.
Yeah,
It was kind of like usually films pick like one genre of music to like fit the whole
Yeah.
film,
Yeah.
and then they just stick to that. Whereas
They got I said the whole music team now and everything for audio. They came out and they went actually and took away some brilliant songs, and you could really see it was well thought out. You know.
yeah,
Yeah. And yeah. it's
like
pretty
instead of picking like
Yeah.
one genre for the whole film, they like looked at the specific moments and thought like, okay, what can we do here? Like first it's like there'd be jazz at one stage kind of near the start, and then it'd be kind of like country western or kind of folky, and then it went to like opera, kind of at the end, it was scored well for like each moment rather than like, well, this is the mood of the overall film. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I thought that was really clever.
And I found you know, the cinematography for it wasn't too complicated either, but it kind of played the story out well. Like, you know, I didn't see very too many long shots or anything, but they were kind of quick kind of shots and stuff, and they kind of played the story out right, you know. I found the subject was kind of always in the middle of the screen and everything, so I thought, yeah, it was kind of well played out and everything.
Yeah, you said last night you were like, the shots are focused on the
Kinda,
characters, and
yeah,
that's all we need to see. Like,
yeah. Kind of not difficult, played it out well.
It was it's very personable, like shots. Like everything seemed like a lot more like real than like, you know, cinema and like, you know, rule of thirds and all this. It was just like, look, we're just filming these people. Like, that's what it felt like.
Yeah, it was
really
just kind of like, we show the environment and the emotions, and that's all we needed to see, like, for us. So
Yeah.
they didn't go crazy, like, which was spot on. Like,
Did anything else kind of come out for you a bit? Anything you noticed?
I had something in my head there, and it's just flowing out again. I don't know. I think my favorite scene though in the whole movie is like the bathroom scene near the end, where he's very clearly like doesn't want to do this anymore, but he like can't stop himself. Do you know, when he's injecting and in the bathroom lying on the ground, like it's just like so horrible to see. Do you know?
it is, yeah. And it's kind of short, like, it was so, like, we were go back to kind of like the shots and stuff, like the way the shots were just kind of like normal and showed us kind of like a normal life, and like it wasn't anything like so cinematic. That's why it was kind of like so easy to watch and relate to. And kind of when you see that scene in the bathroom, then it's kind of like, well, this does happen, like.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what you think then when you say it, you're like, oh, this does happen to people, like, and that happens in like bathrooms, in homes, and, you know, like anywhere, like.
Yeah. I read as well there was like they left out of the movie because it would have just been going around in circles, but there was like 4 other times that he actually nearly died from overdosing.
Jesus.
Yeah. So I thought it was like, obviously I don't think they need to include that because I think you would have just been going around in circles, but I think they didn't need to like dramatize anything, because I think the story in itself just kind of told what needs to be said, like.
Yeah, exactly. Like it didn't like over embellish it or like cram too much information on you, or like try to, you know, shove everything into like 2 hour space. It was just kind of like just
It's
everything
interesting.
important, like.
Yeah. It's interesting too, like if you think about it, the way it was portrayed, like he didn't have like an objectively tough life, as in like he had 2 loving parents, a loving stepmom, like he had step siblings and everything, and it just goes to show it can happen to anyone, like. It's just,
exactly,
it was crazy.
yeah.
Like the minute it's in your system, there's no coming back, you know, like you'll always have this addiction to go back and take more crystal meth, and it's terrible to see, like.
I think as well, like from Nick's perspective, like how in denial he was for so long. When he would like steal money from his brother's money box and everything.
It was like €10.
$8 like from like a 5-year-old, like, but that's how desperate he was, like, you know. It was just
that when he like lied to his dad about it and stuff, like like in his head he probably was in so denial that he believed his own lies, which
that's
is just
exactly it.
so interesting to like see how someone, like how it manifests, how their addiction manifests in like all aspects of their life and relationships and the whole lot.
Like it turns you into a completely different person, like. Like, and that's the only way to put it, like, is you are a completely different person when you're on this drug or addicted to it, because you just do anything for it, like, and it's crazy, like, the thing that some people do, like. But like you were saying, like, it can happen to anyone, like, and people don't think that.
Definitely.
People think like, oh, it only happens to like the lowest of the low, and that's kind of how people view it, like. If that makes sense, like, that's how people kind of have, but it can literally happen to anyone, like, it can happen to your kids, it can happen to you, like, it doesn't really matter, like.
What would you give the film out of 10? Or would you rate it now?
I would say 10 out of 10. When the second time I watched it, it didn't have the same impact on me just because I'd watched it already. But the first time I watched it, I was like, same thing with Steve Jobs. I was like watching interviews a whole lot. I was looking him up on Instagram and everything, and that's when I found out he was an artist and married and everything. But yeah, I would say 10 out of 10. I think it done an unbelievable job at like depicting the reality without like watering down like the actual impact it has on the addict and like their family and their loved ones.
Yeah. I'd say I'd give it like an 8 out of 10. Like it was really, really good. Like, and I can be a real stickler for like ratings. Like I hate giving movies like 10 out of 10. No offense, but like no, it was just the way it was shot and how real everything felt and how the performance and everything in the story was just like, you can't really critique it too much. It's that good. Like,
yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I agree there as well.
Yeah, I give it about a 7 or 8. I agree with Adam. There's really maybe I wouldn't go back and rewatch it now, but it was brilliant.
Yeah.
I would recommend it, and
Definitely.
does really shows the father's perspective and everything, and I think it's good for an older generation. I wouldn't put it anywhere towards anybody that's young or anything, but
Yeah.
it's a good watch. It's a good watch.
Yeah, like it's a hard watch, but like at the same time you can't turn it off. Like it's so good as well.
Yeah.
I think I'd give it an 8.5, nearly a 9, I think, just because I think the storytelling of it was so well done, and like the way they were able to like show us the relationship between the father and son, and even like his stepmom, like when she was chasing him in the car,
Yeah.
and she started crying. It's like, it's everyone is affected. Like she kind of like half raised him, I
Yeah.
suppose, and like even when he went back to his mom, like just through one conversation between him and his mom, we saw like the contrast in the relationship with her between his father.
Yeah.
And I just thought that's kind of like down to the performances of the actors, like, and the director as well. And I thought like it was shot perfectly as well, just to show people's emotions and like the surroundings, and like that's all we needed to know as well. I do think it was a little bit on the long side. Like I thought it was slightly long. I don't know why.
2 hours is long enough, I think.
I thought it could have been slightly shorter, but that's kind of the only thing I have to critique it on. I think everything.
I
else
was
is
gonna say it
perfect.
felt a bit, like it was a nice, good timing. Like it wasn't too long.
I
it wasn't
feel
too
like
short.
that as well.
Maybe I just felt like that
Yeah.
because it was so sad or something. But
Yeah.
no, that's the only thing. Everything else I just thought was so well done. Like the editing of the
Yeah.
scenes, like where they were placed and everything, like the flashbacks to show the relationship, and like the performance and the cinematography, everything I thought was just spot on. Like
Perfect. We better wrap it
Yeah.
up in a
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Do you have a next movie yet, or?
Suppose do you want to?
Almost Famous. Have you
Okay,
seen that?
well,
Is
I haven't.
that the one with Rebel Wilson?
Rebel Wilson? No. It is it's directed and written by Cameron Crowe. It's the same fella who did Jerry Maguire and a couple of other films. But it's Kate Hudson and what's his name? I can't remember. He looks like the guy in American Pie. He's not though. But basically, it's just about there's a couple of great actors. Zoe Deschanel is in it, and Frances McDormand, the
do
one
know it.
from Three
never seen
Billboards
it, though.
Outside Ebbing, Missouri. But it's just about like this guy who's kind of like a genius, and he's like an 11-year-old in like TY, basically, and he's just like a really good writer, and he lies to Rolling Stones to get a writing job where he follows a band around, but he's only like 15. It's based in the 70s, but it's really cool. Yeah.
That sounds good.
Yeah, I think it's on Now TV. I think it's on Netflix as well. I'm not sure, but I'll text you all anyway.
It was on
let you know.
Netflix for a bit. I'm
Yeah.
not too sure if it's still there.
But
Yeah.
send it on to you anyway, right?
All right.
We'll leave it there
All
for
right.
today, so, and see you soon.
See you soon.
Lovely.
See ya.
Thanks. Bye.